So, hi guys. Today we are starting a new series. It's actually a book club that we are starting on Chalchitra Talks, and I am Vaibhav, and this is Vaani. Vaani, say hi.
Hi.
So in this series, we'll be reading out short stories and chapters from various books in every episode. And today we want to start with one particular short story by Ray Bradbury. And Ray Bradbury is one of my favorite authors. And उनकी एक short story है A Little Journey, which I also haven't read by the way, so I don't know कितनी अच्छी है या नहीं. But I have a lot of faith in Ray Bradbury and the kind of stuff he writes. So I think we should begin with it. So Vani, do you want to take over?
Yeah, so I will be reading out the short story for all of you. So let's begin. A Little Journey is about a woman who is, I think, in her mid 80s, and she wants to discover God. And it's the entire story is about her various trips that have failed in her trying to find her being, her meaning to life. So in this story, particular short story, she takes a trip to Mars to find God, to be closer to him. And the entire story is around the plot when she discovers that this was just another guy trying to um, con her. So I'll begin reading the story now. And here we go. She had paid good money to see the inevitable and then had to work to make it happen. There were two important things. One, that she was very old. Two, that Mr. Turkle was taking her to God. For hadn't he patted her hand and said, Mrs. Bellowes, we'll take off into space in my rocket and go to find him together. And that was how it was going to be. Oh, this was not like any other group Mrs. Bellowes had ever joined. In her fervor to light a path for her delicate, tottering feet, she had struck matches down dark alleys and found her way to Hindu mystics who floated their flickering, starry eyelashes over crystal balls. She had walked on the meadow paths with ascetic Indian philosophers imported by daughters in spirit of Madame Blavatsky. She had made pilgrimages to California's tuku jungles to hunt the astrological seer in his natural habitat. She had even consented to signing away the rights to one of her homes in order to be taken into the shouting order of a temple of amazing evangelists who had promised her golden smoke, crystal fire, and the great soft hand of God coming to bear her home. None of these people had ever shaken Mrs. Bellowes' faith, even when she saw them signed away in a black wagon in the night, or discovered their pictures bleak and unromantic in the morning tabloids. The world had roughed them up and locked them away because they knew too much. That was all. And then, 2 weeks ago, she had seen Mr. Turkle's advertisement in New York City. Come to Mars, stay at the Turkle Restorium for 1 week, and then on into space on the greatest adventure life can offer. Send for free pamphlet. Nearer, my God, to thee. Excursion rates round trip slightly lower. Round trip, Mrs. Bellowes had thought. But who would come back after seeing him? And so she had bought a ticket and flown off to Mars and spent 7 mild days at Mr. Turkle's Restorium, the building with the sign on it which flashed, Turkle's Rocket to Heaven. She had spent the week bathing in limpid waters and raising the care from her tiny bones. And now she was fidgeting, ready to be loaded into Mr. Turkle's own special private rocket, like a bullet, to be fired on out into space beyond Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto. And thus, who could deny it? You would be getting nearer and nearer to the Lord. How wonderful. Couldn't you just feel him drawing near? Couldn't you just sense his breath, his scrutiny, his presence? Here I am, said Mrs. Bellowes. An ancient rickety elevator ready to go up the shaft. God need only press the button. Now, on the 7th day, as she minced up the steps of the Restorium, a number of small doubts assailed her. For one thing, she said aloud to no one, it isn't quite the land of milk and honey here on Mars that they said it would be. My room is like a cell. The swimming pool is really quite inadequate. And besides, how many widows who look like mushrooms or skeletons want to swim? And finally, the whole restorium smells of boiled cabbage and tennis shoes. She opened the front door and let it slam somewhat irritably. She was amazed at the other women in the auditorium. It was like wandering in a carnival mirror maze, coming again and again upon yourself, the same flowery face, the same chicken hands, and jingling bracelets. One after another of the images of herself floated before her. She put out her hand, but it wasn't a mirror. It was another lady shaking her fingers and saying, "We're waiting for Mr. Turkle." "Shh! Ah!" whispered everyone. The velvet curtains parted. Mr. Turkle appeared fantastically serene, his Egyptian eyes upon everyone. But there was something, nevertheless, in his appearance which made one expect him to call "Hi!" while fuzzy dogs jumped over his legs, through his hooped arms, and over his back. Then, dogs and all, he should dance with a dazzling piano keyboard smile off into the wings. Mrs. Bellowes, with a secret part of her mind which she constantly had to grip tightly, expected to hear a cheap Chinese gong sound when Mr. Turkle entered. His large, liquid dark eyes were so improbable that one of the old ladies had facetiously claimed she saw a mosquito cloud hovering over them, as they did around summer rain barrels. And Mrs. Bellowes sometimes caught the scent of the theatrical mothball and the smell of a calliope steam on his sharply pressed suit. But with the same savage rationalization and that had greeted all other disappointments in her rickety life, she bit at the suspicion and whispered, "This time it's real. This time it will work. Haven't we got a rocket?" Mr. Turkle bowed. He smiled a sudden comedy mask smile. The old ladies looked in at his epiglottis and sensed chaos there. Before he even began to speak, Mrs. Bellowes saw him picking up each of his words, oiling it, making sure it ran smooth on its rails. Her heart squeezed in like a tiny fist, and she gritted her porcelain teeth. "Friends," said Mr. Turkle, and you could hear the frost snap in the hearts of the entire assemblage. "No," said Mrs. Bellowes ahead of time. She could hear the bad news rushing at her, and herself tied to the track while the immense black wheels threatened and the whistle screamed, helpless. "There will be a slight delay," said Mr. Turkle. In the next instant, Mr. Turkle might have cried or been tempted to cry. "Ladies, be seated," in minstrel fashion, for the ladies had come up at him from their chairs, protesting and trembling. "Not a very long delay," Mr. Turkle put up his hands to pat the air. "How long?" "Only a week." "A week?" "Yes, you can stay here at the Restorium for 7 more days, can you not? A little delay won't matter, will it, in the end? You've waited a lifetime, only a few more days." "At $20 a day," thought Mrs. Bellowes coldly. "What's the trouble?" a woman cried. "A legal difficulty," said Mr. Turkle. "We have a rocket, haven't we?" "Well, yes. But I've been here a whole month waiting," said one old lady. "Delays, delays." "That's right," said everyone. "Ladies, ladies," murmured Mr. Turkle, smiling serenely. "We want to see the rocket." It was Mrs. Bellowes forging ahead, alone, brandishing her fist like a toy hammer. Mr. Turkle looked into the old lady's eyes, a missionary among albino cannibals. "Well, now," he said. "Yes, now," cried Mrs. Bellowes. "I'm afraid," he began. So am I, she said. That's why we want to see the ship. No, no, now, Mrs. He snapped his fingers for her name. Belois, she cried. She was a small container, but now all the seething pressures that had been built up over long years came steaming through the delicate vents of her body. Her cheeks became incandescent. With a wail that was like a melancholy factory whistle, Mrs. Belois ran forward and hung to him almost by her teeth, like a summer-maddened Spitz. She would not and never could let go until he died. And the other women followed, jumping and yapping like a pound let loose on its trainer. The same one who had petted them and to whom they had squirmed and whined joyfully an hour before, now milling about him, creasing his sleeves and frightening the Egyptian serenity from his gaze. This way, cried Mrs. Belois, feeling like the Madame Lafarge, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, I'm sorry. Through the back, we've waited long enough to see the ship. Every day he's put us off, every day we've waited. Now let's see. No, no, ladies, cried Mr. Turkle, leaping about. They burst through the back of the stage and out a door like a flood, bearing the poor man with them into a shed, and then out quite suddenly into an abandoned gymnasium. There it is, said someone, the rocket. And then a silence fell that was terrible to entertain. There was the rocket. Mrs. Belois looked at it, and her hand sagged away from Mr. Turkle's collar. The rocket was something like a battered copper pot. There were 1,000 bulges and rents and rusty pipes and dirty vents on and in it. The ports were clouded over with dust, resembling the eyes of a blind hog. Everyone waited a little sighing wail. Is that the rocket ship Glory be to the highest? Cried Mrs. Belois, appalled. Mr. Turkle nodded and looked at his feet. For which we paid out our $1,000 apiece and came all the way to Mars to get on board with you and go off to find him? Asked Mrs. Belois. Why, that isn't worth a sack of tried peas, said Mrs. Belois. It's nothing but junk. Junk, whispered everyone, getting hysterical. Don't let him get away. Mr. Turkle tried to break and run, but 1,000 possum traps closed on him from every side. He withered. Everybody walked around in circles like blind mice. There was a confusion and a weeping that lasted for 5 minutes as they went over and touched the rocket, the dented kettle, the rusty container for God's children. Well, said Mrs. Belois. She stepped up into the askew doorway of the rocket and faced everyone. It looks as if a terrible thing has been done to us, she said. I haven't any money to go back home to Earth, and I have too much pride to go to the government and tell them that a common man like this has fooled us out of our life's savings. I don't know how you feel about it, all of you, but the reason all of us came is because I am 85, you are 89, you are 78, and all of us are nudging on toward 100. And there's nothing on Earth for us, and it does not appear there's anything on Mars either. We all expected not to breathe much more air or cross many more doilies, or we'd never have come here. So what I have to propose is a simple thing, to take a chance. She reached out and touched the rustic hulk of the rocket. This is our rocket. We paid for our trip, and we are going to take our trip. Everyone rustled and stood on tiptoes and opened an astonished mouth. Mr. Turkle began to cry. He did it quite easily and very effectively. We are going to get in this ship, said Mrs. Belois, ignoring him. And we are going to take off to where we were going. Mr. Turkle stopped crying long enough to say, but It was all a fake. I don't know anything about space. He's not out there anyway. I lied. I do not know where he is, and I could not find him if I wanted to. And you were fools to ever take my word on it. Yes, said Mrs. Bellowes. We were fools. I'll go along on that. But you cannot blame us, for we are old. And it was a lovely, good, and fine idea. One of the loveliest ideas in the world. Oh, we did not really fool ourselves that we could get nearer to him physically. It was the gentle, mad dream of old people, the kind of thing you hold on to for a few minutes a day, even though you know it's not true. So all of you who want to go, you follow me in the ship. But you can't go, Mr. Turkle said. You haven't got a navigator, and that ship is a ruin. You, said Mrs. Bellowes, will be the navigator. She stepped into the ship, and after a moment, the other old ladies pressed forward. Mr. Turkle went milling his arms frantically, was nevertheless pressed through the port, and in a minute the door slammed shut. Mr. Turkle was strapped into the navigator's seat with everyone talking at once and holding him down. The special helmets were issued to be fitted over every grey or white head to supply extra oxygen in case of a leakage in the ship's hull. And at long last, the hour had come, and Mrs. Bellowes stood behind Mr. Turkle and said, "We are ready, sir." He said nothing. He pleaded with them silently, using his great, dark, wet eyes, but Mrs. Bellowes shook her head and pointed to the control. "Take off," agreed Mr. Turkle morosely, and pulled a switch. Everyone fell. The rocket went up from the planet Mars in a great fairy glide, with the noise of an entire kitchen thrown down an elevator shaft, with the sound of pots and pans and kettles and fires boiling and stews bubbling, with the smell of burned incense and rubber and sulfur, with the color of yellow fire and a ribbon of red stretching below them, and all the old women singing and holding to each other, and Mrs. Bellowes crawling upright in the sighing, straining, trembling ship. "Head for space, Mr. Turkle." "It cannot last," said Mr. Turkle sadly. "The ship cannot last, it will." It did. The rocket exploded. Mrs. Bellowes felt herself lifted and thrown about dizzily like a doll. She heard the great screamings and saw the flashes of bodies sailing by her in fragments of metal and powdery light. "Help, help," cried Mr. Turkle, far away on a small radio beam. The ship disintegrated into a million parts, and the old ladies, all 100 of them, were flung straight on ahead with the same velocity as the ship. As for Mr. Turkle, for some reason of trajectory, perhaps he had been blown out the other side of the ship. Mrs. Bellowes saw him failing separate and away from them, screaming and screaming. "There goes Mr. Turkle," thought Mrs. Bellowes. And she knew where he was going. He was going to be burnt and roasted and broiled good, but very good. Mr. Turkle was falling down into the sun. "And here we are," thought Mrs. Bellowes. "Here we are going on out and out and out." There was hardly a sense of motion at all, but she knew that she was traveling at 50,000 miles an hour and would continue to travel at this speed for an eternity until she saw the other women swinging all about her in their own trajectories. A few minutes of oxygen left to each of them in their helmets, and each was looking up to where they were going. Of course, thought Mrs. Bellowes, out into space, out, and the darkness like a great church, and the stars like candles. And in spite of everything, Mr. Turkle, the rocket, and the dishonesty, we are going toward the Lord. And there, yes, there, as she fell on and on, coming toward her, she could almost discern the outline now. Coming toward her was his mighty golden hand, reaching down to hold her and comfort her like a frightened sparrow. "I am Mrs. Amelia Bellowes," she said quietly, in her best company voice. I am from the planet Earth.
Nice. This is good. I would suggest you first drink water first. Like मेरे को नहीं पता था इतनी लंबी short story है. इतनी एनर्जी
Yeah.
के साथ तुमने बोला like you drink water and like take a break. मैं बीच में सोच रहा था हम इसको split कर लेते हैं, but your flow was so good. मेरे को लगा if I take over in between, I would just ruin it. But this is good. Like
This, yeah,
let's discuss it for a minute, na?
yeah,
Like there are two like mostly the two paragraphs which stayed with me the most. Uh, First when the rocket explodes, uh, when it's written everybody
yeah,
so when the rocket explodes, it's written everybody fell. The rocket went up from the planet Mars in a great fiery glide with the noise of an entire kitchen thrown down an elevator shaft, with the sound of pots and pans and kettles and fires boiling and stews bubbling, with the smell of burned incense and rubber and sulfur, with the color of yellow fire and a ribbon of red stretching below them, and all the old women singing and holding to each other, and Mrs. Billowes crawling upright in the sighing, straining, trembling ship. So this was one, and the other was uh, uh, where she uh, where she mentions ki uh, like thinking about God, like these are the things which matter to us कि मतलब वो अपनी age वगैरह बताते हैं. uh,
yeah. It
yeah,
was a gentle mad dream of old people.
yes, it was a
I
gentle mad
love that
dreamer.
line.
Yes.
I have to find it.
Yeah, so I think it's this one. I
Yeah,
don't, yeah, I haven't any, like, I have no money to go back home to Earth, and I have too much pride
mhm,
to go to the government and tell them
yeah,
a common man like this has fooled us out of life saving. I don't know how you feel about it, all of you, but the reason all of us came is because I'm 85, you are 89, and you are 78. And all of us are nudging on toward 100. And there's nothing on Earth for us. And it doesn't appear there is anything on Mars either. We are
yeah.
all expected not to breathe much air or crochet many more doilies, or we'd never have come here. So what I have to propose is a single thing to take a chance. Okay, this is an interesting para which I noted, but it doesn't have that line.
Yeah, that's like, I guess, two paras later. Yes, we were fools. I will go along
Oh
on that.
yes,
But you
yes.
cannot
Can I?
blame us for we are old and yeah.
Yeah. So the para is yes. Said Mrs. Belois, we were fools. I'll go along with that. But you can't blame us for we are old, and it was lovely, good, and fine idea. One of the loveliest ideas in the world. Oh, we didn't really fool ourselves that we could get nearer to him physically. It was the gentle, mad dream of old people. The kind of thing you hold on to for a few minutes a day, even though you know it's not true. So all of you who want to
Yeah.
go, you follow me up in the ship. So this one line, it was the gentle, mad dream
The
of
gentle
old
mad
people,
dream.
the kind of thing you hold on to for a few minutes a day, even if you
Even
know that it is not true. This is like, I was like, and this is a very Ray Bradbury-ish thing to do. When when like people start giving monologues and what he like when his character starts giving monologues about why they are doing a certain thing, na, uh, वो जिस लेवल पे कैसे मतलब हाई पिच में जब कोई बोलता है ऐसा होता है मतलब like it really stays with me, and like it's
yeah.
always like it's the greatest thing and like it is what we are meant to do. It was a gentle mad dream of old people, the kind of thing you hold on to for a few minutes even though you know it's not true. So ये जो delusion दिखाता है ना लोगों का कि मतलब I know कि मतलब पहले तो पूरा दिखा दिया कि हम delusional है ये कर रहे हैं, but there comes a time when they tell why they are delusional and how they are self-aware of
Yeah.
that delusion. Like that is so good.
There's another line in this story where she actually justifies the con artists that have conned her before Mr. Turkle. And I don't know, it's something like she gives an excuse that the world has roughed them up and locked them away because they knew too much and that was all. And her justifying somebody else's actions, which are obviously wrong, was something that stayed with me. For example, like how humans can be so naive and then
Yeah.
we go ahead and justify our actions through all the
Yeah.
means. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
we
But मेरे
try
को
to
लग रहा है कि
fool
इसके like the
ourselves.
it really picks up in the second half, like the story.
It does.
Yeah.
I love
And
the irony in the story. So they want to get to the god, and she's been conned all through the while, whatever. And then she spiritually meets God. Like she's
yeah.
been trying to meet her through people all this while, but then eventually she just.
And hence the last line is also so powerful, like when she says her full name and I'm from
Yeah.
planet Earth. Yeah. So मेरे को ये रीडिंग में एक और बहुत चीज लगती है, एंड लाइक स्पेशली मेरा रे ब्रैडबेरी के साथ ये रिलेशन रहा है कि सो रे ब्रैडबेरी को ना लोग साइफाई नॉवलिस्ट कंसिडर नहीं करते, लाइक द हार्डकोर जो साइफाई नॉवेल्स लिखते हैं ना, बिकॉज इसकी नॉवल में मतलब फैक्चुअलिटी जो होता है, मतलब रियलिज्म नहीं होता, लाइक व्हाट एवर रे ब्रैडबेरी राइट्स। लाइक अगर आप साइंटिफिक एंगल से सोचो कि कोई मार्स जा रहा है, सो ही इज मोस्टली अबाउट द इमोशंस। सो व्हेन अभी तक जब तक मैंने 80% जब तक बुक पढ़ी ना, ये स्टोरी पढ़ी, मैं ये सोच भी नहीं रहा था कि मैंने ये विजुअलाइज ही नहीं किया कि इन लोगों ने हेलमेट पहने हुए हैं जिसमें ऑक्सीजन है। Are you getting my point? So because
Yeah.
sometimes he doesn't reveal these things, and like he leaves it ki the way you want to visualize it, you can. And even if he does, sometimes I intentionally don't think of it. Like यार अब तो मैंने बिना helmets के imagine कर लिया. I have imagined a world on Mars where people are not wearing oxygen helmets, and I imagined a complete story. So sometimes फिर जब कुछ लिखा हुआ आता है ना कि नहीं उन्होंने helmet पहने हुए थे, so my mind is like, fuck it. For me, they were not right. Has it ever like happened to you?
Yeah,
Like
because
when you
it
kind
allows.
of modify the text according to your sensibilities.
Yeah, it allows you to even change the setting of the story. I mean, you can
Yes.
relate it to something that is happening even today. So, yeah.
Yes. जैसे कभी कभी होता है कि आपने पूरा विजुअलाइज कर लिया कि अच्छा चल रहा है, जैसे बहुत सारे सीन्स हैं, ठीक है, रात हो रही है, अच्छा से एक थोड़ा सा बारिश हो रही है, ये सब हो रहा है, एंड उसने कुछ ऐसा लिख दिया, एंड देन द सन स्टार्ट सेटिंग, और कुछ ऐसे सन मतलब सनलाइट ऐसे, एंड आई एम लाइक नहीं यार, मेरे को तो डे इमेजिन ही नहीं करना, मैंने तो पूरी स्टोरी नाइट में इमेजिन कर ली। दिस इज समथिंग आई थिंक अबाउट अ लॉट, कि आपने दिमाग में एक पूरा कैरेक्टर बना लिया, एंड देन ही राइट्स कि यार उसके यहाँ पे एक मोल था और वो मोल ऐसे पॉइंट पे था, बट देन आई एम लाइक व्हाई डू आई इमेजिन अ मोल नाउ?
400 pages later you realize कि मुझे पूरा character change करना पड़ेगा.
But the point is, then you would you change the character or not?
That depends on the edition of the, I don't know, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I don't like this is one thing, I mostly read to steal, in the sense ki I mostly read to steal architectures and atmospheres, and I am more than the characters, I am mostly invested in the tonality, the atmospheres, and the architecture. So if you have seen Inception में भी there is this point जहाँ पे एक बंदी होती है जिसका काम होता है to build the architecture of dreams, and they always hire that person क्योंकि वो अपनी sensibilities लाती है. So as a filmmaker also, I am just too much involved into कि अच्छा setting कैसी है, ये कैसा, ये कैसा. And Martian Chronicles अगर आप पढ़ोगे रे ब्रैडबेरी की, जिसमें like there are 20 short stories just about Mars, उसमें भी there is the same thing कि on the second read like I realized कि यार ये चीजें तो मैंने जान पूछ के मेरे माइंड ने एलिमिनेट कर दी when he had given this detail कि अगर वो ग्लास डोर्स हैं और ऊपर से ऐसी स्पेसशिप्स हैं, बट मेरे माइंड ने वो चीजें एलिमिनेट कर दी because I did not want to pick it up, and yet I find Ray Bradbury so beautiful. So ये बहुत होता है मेरे साथ, but I still appreciate him too much. And dialogues में भी आप देखो the way the people open up, it's like totally like they are like just letting themselves go.
Yeah. But it's a classic example of, say, अगर Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy Ray Bradbury ने लिखी होती तो it would have been something like this. And
Yeah. But dude, this was fun, yeah. I think we should do it a lot more often, and we should add a lot more people to our club. and let's make it a proper Chalchitra book reading club. So I think like we'll tell the viewers if you want to. I as of this moment we'll only add like you guys can also be a part of this club. हम आपको अगली calls में add कर लिया करेंगे. Like one person at a time. अगली call में शायद एक जना होगा. उसके अगर दो को ला सकते हैं. But first you will have to become a member of Chalchitra community. And you can either do it via YouTube जहाँ पे आप हमें YouTube पे contribute कर सकते हैं और Patreon. And then we'll start adding people and हम हर बार वानी को इतना परेशान नहीं करेंगे कि इन द सेंस कि शी इज रीडिंग सो मच. मेरे को आई एम रियली सॉरी, आई फील बैड दैट आई मेड यू रीड द होल थिंग. मतलब मेरे को बीच में लग रहा था यार अब मैं रोक देता हूँ, बट यू वर आल्सो इन द फ्लो. और मेरे को लगा कि देन इफ आई टेक ओवर आई विल डेफिनेटली like bring the energy of the room down. Then what do you think? We should get more people in this exclusive club of ours.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely we should.
that would be fun. And like because I am into Ray Bradbury, like लोगों के अलग अलग interest होंगे and like they can read. Maybe हर जैसे you read Ray Bradbury and I am a fan of Ray Bradbury. Next time you could have read something like आप क्या आपके favorite author की मैं कोई किताब पढ़ सकता हूँ.
Yeah.
We can experiment like that. Like, and this is an experimental series. We have too much. At least I have too much time in my hand right now. So I hope like we can like keep doing these things. So I'll see you soon, Vani. अभी मेरे को भी अपना खुद का मूवी रिकमेंडेशन वीडियो बनाना है. आपका भी नेक्स्ट book recommendation video आने वाला है. What are you recommending next week? Don't tell me the name of the book. Just give me an idea.
So I am planning to recommend a non-fiction, and it's somewhat related to introverts. So
nice. Yeah. Interesting. So I think this was a lot of fun. So guys, keep watching our channel. Thank you so much. मेरे को लगता नहीं आप यहाँ तक पहुँचे होंगे, but like अगर आप यहाँ तक हमारा वीडियो देखा है, so let's ask them to say some random word in the comments, just to check how if there is a like let's give them a phrase like Mrs. Belois है ना उनका नाम Bellows. So let's make them say Mrs. Belois hates planet Jupiter.
that's good.
Yeah, so if you have watched a video at this moment, like leave a comment in the comment section. Mrs. Belois hates the planet Jupiter. ठीक है, and we'll see you guys soon. चलो, okay, Vani, bye.
Bye.
Bye, bye, guys, bye.